This is Red Essay, Dispositions of an Urban Cherokee. My name's Brandon Caruso. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. Season 2 of Red Essay brings Native leaders from all over the country to share their insights, their work, and how to transcend just being a citizen of your tribe. It's a place where you too can find out the secrets to success in the worlds of community leadership, politics, academia, and much more. Honestly, it's got a lot of gems I think you're going to enjoy. So without further ado, enjoy Red Essay Season 2. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Red Essay Season 2. This season we're highlighting Native leadership, and this week we're honored to have Jim Ruel. He's a member of the Ojibwe tribe. He's a comedian and a writer and an actor from the Milwaukee area. I've got to know him the last few years. He's been in Los Angeles, and he's definitely been my go-to for any multimedia. But he brings a lot to the table in terms of helping out the Native community, not only in the entertainment aspect, so you got film, writing, comedy, but he also is an advocate for really just following your dreams and knocking it out of the park. And he's been able to sustain himself and his family largely off of his talents. And so he's a really smart guy, and he's got a lot to share with the community. So without further ado, here's Jim Ruel, and enjoy the show. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about your background, like where you're from and how you got into comedy?
Well, I've been working pretty hard on my stand-up comedy, and I've been pushing myself to do more, like giving back to the community through charity shows. So I've been doing a lot of fundraisers lately. So I did one for the Autism Society in Whittier. We had a performance there. I did one in Dallas for a gala fundraiser there. I'll be hosting Paku's annual gala fundraiser, too, in November. Comedy was like a childhood dream job of mine. I was into that, and I was into improv, which was pretty big back in Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. And I was into just kind of any kind of entertainment. I didn't even know what I wanted to do, really. I mean, kind of stand-up, but I was into juggling and yo-yo tricks. And I started an improv comedy team in my high school. And then later in college, I was way back from an Indian conference, and I sat next to a comedian on the plane. And he kind of talked about that career, and I was like, oh, man, I could really do that. And so then I started hitting open mics, and I moved back to Wisconsin, where I hit more open mics and started working the comedy club circuit.
Oh, wow. So you kind of randomly sat next to a comedian, and he shared a little bit about his career, and you thought, hey, that seems like something I could be into?
Well, it was something I really wanted to do. I just didn't know you could have a real career at it. So when he was talking about the money he was making, and yeah, you can make a real living at it, and I was like, oh, shit. Screw engineering. I'm going to do comedy.
Wow, that's awesome.
When you're young and you're at a place like Stanford, you're kind of cocky, you're like, honestly, I was just like, anything that I've really, really worked hard at and been dedicated to, I've done well at. And as far as career goes, it should be something I'm really into. Then I'll probably work hard at it and stay dedicated to it, and it should go all right. I always felt like it didn't kind of matter what I did. As long as I was really into it, I should probably be fine.
Yeah, that's really cool. Did you have...
And it's way more interesting than electrical engineering, that's for sure.
Yeah, what was your family's response when you're like, well, this engineering thing is pretty cool, but let me tell you about stand-up comedy?
It's kind of how I judge people. I have a response to that. My family was totally cool with it. My family was pretty creative types. Mm-hmm. My older brother is a painter. My older sisters, one does some painting and the other one does some poetry and stuff. And then my younger sisters are very creative as well. And I kind of pushed them to work in the creative field too, because one was going to be pre-med, and then she switched to fashion design, and then another one was already into poetry and everything like that. So, and then the younger one does improv, and she's done magical singing and opera singing and all kinds of stuff.
Oh man, that's awesome! And I know you've been able to definitely connect with your background.
Yeah.
I don't know much about your tribe, but I know that in the LA Native community are super active. How did you start to get involved with the LA Native community?
That's just kind of wherever I go, I get involved with the local Indian community. So I was really involved in college, and that's one of the ways I've been kind of reconnected was through, I was involved with the American Indian Science and Engineering Society. So I have friends from my college days that are out here as engineering professionals and stuff. And a lot of it when I was a friend of mine invited me to get involved with SEIC as a board member, which I was initially, and then they were looking for somebody to get involved in their IT department, or ITE, and travel entertainment. So I came on for one filming job, and then next thing I know, I'm the only one left in the program. So that's been a weird transition. And I had an interest in filmmaking and all that, but I didn't have too much of a background in it. But now I feel pretty competent in going and supporting somebody, shooting their film and handling a camera and doing sound. And I've learned how to edit and produce. I've produced a lot of my own YouTube videos and stuff. So, and I just helped another native gal, Sheila Shalaki, produce her latest YouTube video. We're in the middle of post-production for that right now.
That's really cool. I mean, and that sounds like a pretty natural progression. So you're into entertainment and you're doing it, and because you're native, you kind of try to get more involved with the scene and start helping people out.
Well, I mean, the nice thing about SCIC is there is some stability in that, and then it's been through little projects here and there, I've been able to contact people and connect with people and kind of learn what they do and what they're about. And now I feel like there's a pool of us that we could literally, if someone has a script and maybe a little budget to make it happen, we could all kind of jump on it and help them make it happen. And that's kind of where I feel like we're at right now.
That's cool. And how long did it take to get to that point?
Well, it's taken a couple of years for me just kind of get to know people, and be involved in projects here and there, I guess. Just for kind of people to get to know me a little bit and have some sense of, okay, this guy he's all right.
Right.
Because there's so much suspicion in this community with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes kind of time to build that. Yeah, and one cool thing is through comedy, I have contacts all over the country, well, through SEIC's national network, the other Workforce Investment Act. So that's a huge network right now. So kind of anyone that comes into our office or I meet on the road who has kind of all I do is kind of ask them, so what do you want to do? Okay, do you want to talk to this person? This guy does that, and this person over here would be good to talk to, and kind of crazy.
And so, you do a lot of traveling across the nation, and what are you seeing as far as entertainment nationwide for Native Americans?
I think it's another wave. I mean, I think there's been multiple waves of Native entertainment kind of being pushed by, individuals and kind of small groups. And I think just the difference now is that there's new media available, so it's a lot easier to produce video and audio. So there's more of that in the hands of our people, able to produce it. And currently you're seeing most of the new stuff coming out on YouTube. But you're also seeing some more, I think the cost of making film are gone down. Making feature films has gone down quite a bit too, in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, yeah, you can spend $300 million to make a movie, but in order to make a small one, you can get away with, pretty small budget and crank something out digitally. But I really see the most growth happening through basically through YouTube. And the nice thing about YouTube is an immediate feedback. So you can put a video out there and kind of show it to your friends and see if it gets any kind of traction. And there's been a few producers out there that have gotten some pretty big hits. But I also think a lot of the success is going to come from native producers making non-native themed material. My analogy is Steven Spielberg. He didn't start off with Schindler's List. That was his 15th movie or so. Where he really hit some of the hard stuff with his people, the Jewish people. So I think a lot of native filmmakers, that's what they start with. They start with the depressing boarding school, native kids being abused kind of movie, something like that, or some kind of genocide theme.
Mm-hmm.
Versus starting off with making kind of a fluff piece almost, or not fluff, but like an E.T. or a Jaws or some kind of third kind, sci-fi blockbuster type stuff that kind of he focused on earlier in his career. The stuff that you can build a big career around, then you can have the clout to do some of the more challenging features that probably aren't as monetarily strong.
Sure.
I'm kind of waiting for someone to kind of bust out like that. Sheila Shalaki, the gal I worked with last week in shooting her short, she already has 2 videos that each have over 1 million hits. And as far as I know, I don't know of any other natives that have produced shorts on YouTube that have that many hits. And her stuff is spoofing Disney princesses. And monetizing this, I think she'll be making some, okay money starting off with this, though. But it's demonstrating her work, her ability to write, tell stories through film, that kind of thing. Previously, SCIC had done the Creative Spirit shorts. And they were producing 1 or 2 a year, but every year was a different director, different writer. So you weren't seeing that cumulative work and growth for those specific individuals that I'd like to see.
Yeah, and so for a native person that's interested in entertainment and putting their stuff on YouTube, when you kind of direct it towards a native audience, I mean, what do you think about that? Is that pretty limiting because it's so much
Extremely
smaller?
limiting, yeah. I mean, I think our community deserves to have material that's written by our people, for our people, that when you watch it, you don't have that dissonance where you know it was written by a non-native and they messed stuff up. And I
Uh-huh.
think we do deserve that. And so I don't want to discourage people from doing that, but just to know at this point in time, there's not a big market out for it in the mainstream. You know, it's like science fiction. Science fiction, like a movie like the original Planet of the Apes dealt with racism in America in the 60s.
Mhm.
But instead of having something directly on that topic, they put it in the future in an post-apocalyptic Earth and had white people be the mainstream or be the oppressed and the apes be the ones in charge. And that's something like Ray Bradbury talks about, that it's not, science fiction isn't really about the future of science and reality. It's just another way to frame social issues so that more people will take it in, or different people will take it in. Just another
Mhm.
way to frame it, I guess.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
I think there's, you know, it's like watching Braveheart, you know, about the guy from Scotland. And I think most Native people could relate to that on some levels.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So maybe take a native theme, or maybe even just being native, you kind of have maybe a little different perspective. And so telling a story that doesn't necessarily have to be native can have underlying tones, of that different perspective.
hmm hmm telling human stories is the key. Um, and I think take the element of race out of it necessarily, which is hard to do, but I think there's some basic things that you can key on. And I
Okay.
also think as a clever Native person might even kind of feel it, like, oh, this might have been written by a Native person, you know.
Hmm.
And in light of that, I think there's a multitude of ways that Native entertainment producers can go. So it's kind of like what their passion is about, what kind of stories they want to tell. But you know, there hasn't been like a real solid TV series focusing on natives that's been produced and put out there.
Hmm.
You know, like something on Netflix where they buy 13 episodes and throw them out there and you see how it goes. You know, I don't see why something that's really well written and produced and focuses on natives, I don't see why it wouldn't necessarily do pretty well. Since it has never been done, Hollywood doesn't like to necessarily put that kind of money into something like that.
Sure.
But things like Netflix really changed the game, though. So rather than being the limited number of time slots on a TV channel, you're dealing with streaming where they just have a huge library of stuff, and they can put it out there, and it doesn't necessarily have to destroy right away. You know, it can kind of simmer and build a bit of a following, and they can pay for it accordingly.
Hmm.
Um, but you know, I'm like, for example, I think if we had a team of people going through kind of the canon of Native literature that's out there, and traditional stories and news stories and major events, and kind of built an assessment log of what would it take to turn these things into movies. You know, what potentially do this a good translation? Is this kind of catching people? What would the budget be? Can we do it for an extremely low budget?
Yeah.
If we had like a team of like student interns or something like that, spend a year going through them all, like a team of like 20 people, and then kind of set up some kind of criteria for it, and maybe sketch out some ideas, and then maybe reach out to the authors or whoever and see if they'd be willing to work in a program like this at extremely low budget, and just kind of like every other year, crank out a well-made, low-budget native film based on this tremendous resource of stories and stuff that's out there that hasn't even been tapped into.
That's
I
really
think if you
interesting.
put one a year out on Netflix and it was well-made, I think within 5 years, people come to recognize this new trend of quality native films being made.
Wow. Yeah, that's really powerful. I think you're right.
There's kind of ways where we're trying to work on stuff like that. So my friend Merton Running up at Stanford kind of has a piece that he's been working on forever, and now that he's at Stanford, he kind of has some clout and he's got some connections with Netflix and Amazon, so they're working on piecing together money to produce that. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, really? So like a, Netflix original, which we've kind of starting to be seeing.
Yeah, this would probably be like an Amazon original, but they're not
Mhm.
sure yet exactly.
I do think that there's probably even some news stories told. I mean, given that maybe an urban American Indian might not know a lot about life on the reservation, and they have their own unique native stories that are that could be told as well.
Yeah, I think it's a big deal in urban areas for our next generation to really focus on making sure they know who they are. Like I definitely see younger Native people in this town not really associating with it very personally or on a level that's that necessarily that important with them. I mean,
Okay.
unless their family's like into powwows or something that's very tangible, they probably don't care.
Mm.
Maybe they do care, but they don't know what to do with it, and maybe they don't feel like they are really Indian because they grew up in the city and are disconnected.
Right.
So I feel like I think the future for, native, urban natives that are really geographically removed from their people, it's not like, I mean, if you live in Tulsa, you're not that removed from your local tribes, right?
Right.
Um, but I feel like we, as members of a specific tribe, kind of need to get together and form like culture groups.
Uh-huh.
I was on a plane ride back from Rhode Island 2 days ago, and I saw a number of Jewish people on the plane. And I could see they're definitely focused on their culture and their attire, and I heard them speaking Yiddish, and a lot of this is reinforced in their schools and everything, and they have the population nationwide to pull this off. But I feel like at least some tribes, like the Cherokee and Ojibwe and Navajos and some others, have enough of a population out here that they can actually spend time in focusing on building up their tribal community out here. Ceremonies, language, maintaining that kind of network with back home and that kind of thing. Like when I was in high school, I competed in the classics, which was like Latin and Roman history, Greek mythology, etymology of the language, some Greek language. And it was competitive. We go to these conventions and take these tests and stuff. And I was very good at it and really got into it. And then I'm like, man, it'd be cool if our native nerds did this for our own culture, our own cultures.
Right.
You could learn. So like they had like high school competitions, the Ojibwe decathlon, where you kind of have like build up a canon of books, modern literature, older literature, language, vocabulary, sayings, mottos, phrases, history with all the different reservations, and then prehistory before that, oral history, traditional stories, mythologies. And then you test them on it, make it competitive. Young people, young nerds will respond to that kind of competition and really push themselves against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you could do one similarly for the Cherokee with all the different communities and schools. And it'd be challenging because you probably have different stories, that have kind of passed through the years in Oklahoma versus the ones in Eastern Carolina. All of a sudden you'd have kids in high school age really knowing their stuff, knowing the laws and how they affected their people and all these different things. It'd be more exciting come college to have kids entering college that really knew their shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of coming in knowing almost nothing.
Yeah, there's definitely a whole lot of that's a whole can of worms with what's being taught in school and how unprepared people are for the business
Yeah.
world.
I mean, I knew Greek mythology inside out
Mm.
in high school. I knew the genealogy trees, everything, all that stuff. I had all that stuff memorized.
Wow.
I routinely placed in the top 2 or 3 in the country in the academic tests they had on that subject.
Oh, wow.
But we could be doing that for our own cultures. Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, I don't want to keep you and too much longer. So I really appreciate it. I think we got a lot of really good stuff and touched on some really important things going on. Is there anything that you kind of want to end on?
Nope. No, kidding. I think one of the other big concerns I have right now is that I know my daughter has autism, and just kind of reaching out to the Native community for kids who have autism and other conditions. I think that's a big issue too, in urban areas and in tribes too up in the reservations. So I see that as being kind of a big issue for us too.
Is there a lot of resources for natives with the autism?
There's the Autism Society and there's some general autism programs, but they aren't really Native specific.
Mm.
But yeah, there was one group that I've seen reach out from the community pilot, the Autism Society, and they're pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But it's a lot. I mean, it's very involved. It's very taxing. We spend probably $500 a month on therapy for our daughter, and then the time invested into it. We're very fortunate to live in a school district that has a lot of resources for special needs kids.
Wow. Yeah, that seems like a huge challenge. I didn't know that, Jim.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I definitely would be interested in finding out a little bit more about, those kinds of resources for our kids. And I know that
Mm.
like TANF does have some resources, although, I think they're fairly
But
limited.
I think part of it is educating yourself on the system, understanding what the realities are, and working the system to your advantage for your kids.
Sure.
If that means strategically moving so you're in a better school district, consider, to even know that that's an option is important.
Right.
But to work towards that, I think we're all willing to make sacrifices for our kids, but we don't know which ones to make or how to go about it early. And with like autism, the earlier you get help, the better. So you're in a race against time.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The younger they get the therapy, the better their chances are of being able to speak and just be an independent person when they get older.
Right. Sure. Wow. Okay. Well, no, I really appreciate your time, and I definitely want to hear more about your work on that, and if we could get something going too with some kind of resources as far as helping out in the education field, I'm definitely on board with that.
Yeah.
So very cool. All right, Jim. Well, take care, buddy,
All right.
and I'll touch
All right.
base with you soon.
All right. Cool. Talk to you later.
Okay. See ya.
Okay, there you have it. Thank you to Jim Ruel for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I think he covered a lot of really good points. My favorite term being native nerds. I consider myself a nerd, so now I'm just going to consider myself a native nerd from here on out. I really like what Jim had to say, especially about native entertainers that are starting off and why it might not be the best idea to go for that native story right off the bat and limit your audience. I think that too often we do get typecast in that. Really cool topics. So thank you again, Jim. And look forward to next week, another episode of Red Essay Season 2. Take care.